Well, the latest GDP numbers were out today for the latest quarter and they've defied expectations, especially after the note ban. Growth has been pegged at the last quarter at 7%, although it's the slowest quarter in 8 quarters. But according to the government, the impact of the note ban hasn't really been that bad. Sandeep Phukan joining us on that story. Sandeep, how is the government saying, how do those numbers add up? Because we have also seen other economic data very worrying on the jobs front and on the manufacturing front. So, you know, this is a pretty good estimate for this quarter despite all that and demonetization.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, these numbers should give comfort to the government. In fact, the Secretary for Economic Affairs, Mr. Shaktikanta Das, who had in many ways had become the face of the note ban announcements, subsequently, you know, subsequent to the Prime Minister's announcement, he was the first to come out and react and said that all those negatives that were being written about demonetization, these numbers have proven them wrong, and they were very happy. Of course, the Finance Ministry and the government admits that temporarily there was a dip in the consumption, but overall the impact has been very good. In fact, if you compare these set of figures, Nidhi, with just the figures that came out last week, the World Bank, for example, I mean, the International Monetary Fund, for example, had cut down the growth prospects to 6.6%. In fact, most estimates had suggested that for the quarter, for the third quarter, which is October, November, December, November and December are the months when the impact of demonetization was felt most acutely. During this time, the growth would not surpass 6.5%. Different agencies put it in the range of 6 to 6.4%. But the government figures today say that it's 7%. So, well, as I said, that it should give comfort to the numbers. But critics will actually examine these numbers in some detail, Nidhi, to find out if the numbers tell the real story.
All right, Sandeep, thanks a lot for that. And joining us on the program tonight is Naina Lal Kidwai, the chairperson of Max Financial Services, the former president of FICCI. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, the chairman and managing director of Biocon, is with us tonight. Professor Arun Kumar, author and economist, here in the studio with us, and P.N. Vijay, the spokesperson of the BJP, with us tonight as well. Ms. Kidwai, to you first, ma'am. Are you heartened to see these figures? Does it give you some degree of relief, particularly after all the gloom and doom that was predicted after the note ban?
Well, certainly the 7% is a pleasant surprise, given exactly as Sandeep said, the expectation was more around 6.5, 6.6 for the quarter and indeed for the year. So this bodes very well. Of course, there is no doubt that if we had not had the demonetization, maybe this rate would have looked even better. I think as the numbers get dissected, there will be critics who will look at the fact that there's a bit of base effect here, given where the last quarter last year was at, and that in itself will give some of the analysis here. I think the good news here is, as you begin to look at the sector by sector approach, is certainly sectors like trade, agriculture, utilities that got the benefit of the old notes running in the system were not impacted negatively vis-a-vis other sectors which we know, like FMCG and some of the consumption sectors that were. So there's clearly been some negative and fortunately enough positive to keep this rate buoyant at the 7%. But yes, it is a relief, and I think we do have cause to celebrate and at least look forward to a GDP number for the year end, which is not going to be as bad as we had suspected. I think the critical thing here is going to be, are we going to see a V-shaped effect after demonetization as remonetization comes in? Because at best it is a temporary negative. Or is it going to be more U-shaped? And I'm more of the view that it's going to be a sort of U-shaped effect where it comes back, but comes back not as a sharp uptick. And I think that's what we have to look forward to. But certainly by the middle of next year, to have this set aside and get back to our natural rate of growth. Okay, by the middle of next year. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, what are your first thoughts on these numbers? You know, we just had a report the other day, in fact, just a couple of days ago,
about job numbers. India spend, quoting RBI data, had shown that sales of manufactured goods have fallen by 3.7% in this fiscal, the first decline in 7 years, leading to fears of layoffs and so on. And therefore, do you think that given all that data and these numbers, does it add up to you? What do you think?
Well, as Naina very rightly said, I think there have been a lot of balancing factors and set-offs and positives and negatives which have helped to buoy up these numbers, which is really welcome news. And I think it also basically reflects on a very stable and robust underlying economy and economic factors. But having said that, I think we cannot deny the fact that we have to really address certain challenges that we are facing today. There are headwinds that we are facing in terms of exports and rising protectionism across the world. This quarter's number also reflected that we saw a lot of positive export trends because of the US. Now, is this going to continue is something that remains to be seen. The other thing is, the automotive sector has also, expressed its concerns. They have said that they've seen a decline in sales and rural consumption, as was pointed out earlier on. But I think what we really need to also look at is to see what's happening in terms of competitiveness. Now, China, of course, we outperformed China. China showed a 6.8% growth last quarter, and we actually bettered that with 7%. But I think China has seen its currency devalue significantly, which makes them more competitive in terms of exports. And we also need to make sure that we don't start seeing ourselves being outcompeted because of a very strong rupee. The rupee has been very stable.
You appear to be striking a note of caution about how we move ahead. From what I understand, you are striking a note of caution.
Yes, because I think we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel that we do need to address some of the global factors that we are staring at. And we also need to make sure that, now that the banks are so, richly capitalized thanks to the demonetization and remonetization that has been sort of, calibrated, I think we need to make sure that we find money getting into the right investment cycles. I think that's what is really going to help with economic revival.
I just want to ask Professor Arun Kumar, therefore, do these numbers add up to you? As even Naina Lal Kidwai was pointing out, you had all these various, estimates. Right. Sandeep was pointing out earlier as well of 6.5, 6.1% and so on. And this is great. But what do you think? Do you think that the note ban impact was just transitory, as the Economic Affairs Secretary says?
No, the problem is that the note ban immediately hit the unorganized sector. And the data as it is calculated does not take the unorganized sector into account. It's based on the organized sector. For instance, the index of industrial production takes into account the organized sector. Now, what is done is that the unorganized sector is taken to be a proportion of the organized sector. But this is where the split took place. Organized sector stagnated while the unorganized sector declined dramatically in the beginning. And then that continued because people migrated back to the rural areas. So in other words, the unorganized sector, which is 45% of the GDP, probably had negative growth rate. And therefore, the rate of growth should have dropped very sharply. Second is that the bank credit already in October was the lowest in 50 years, and that declined further because as CMIE data shows that investments declined in this quarter from 2,40,000 crores earlier years to about 1,30,000 crores. So that dramatic decline in investment means credit offtake will not be there. If credit offtake is not there, then industry would not really recover. So in other words, the data that's coming in from various surveys, the SBI data of survey in January.
Even the RBI's own data.
RBI's data, but SBI's data, the CMIE data, the Nikkei PMI data, the data from All India Manufacturers Association, the data from Punjab, Haryana, Delhi Chamber of Commerce and Industry suggests a dramatic effect on industry, even the organized sector. So in other words, if you see all this, then the question is, where is the growth coming from? What is happening is, past is being projected into the future. So it's as if, the past trend till October is being projected. That I think is not the right way to do it.
So you're saying So you're saying you don't think it's 7%?
I don't think it's right. Similarly, agriculture, the sowing increased by 7% acreage, and it's taken that therefore that will have an increase in production. But if productivity has declined because sowing was delayed, inputs were delayed, and therefore, as some agriculture experts have pointed out, that productivity would decline. So we cannot take these kind of projections that have been the usual, because demonetization was a very unusual time, and therefore for unusual times you have to have unusual methodology. You cannot depend on the methodology of earlier years.
So P.N. Vijay, Professor Kumar doesn't agree. He says the methodology is flawed and that this doesn't really reflect the crisis that the economy is facing because of demonetization. Mr. Vijay.
I think he reminds me of that tourist couple who went to the Taj Mahal, and the old lady was admiring the Taj Mahal and taking pictures, and this other guy was looking at his Michelin and said, this must be something horribly wrong. This can't be the Taj Mahal. As per this, I have not reached Agra yet. So he's using all sorts of indirect parameters when we have the GDP data in front of us, and I don't think there is any, anecdotally, 23 times out of 24 times in the last 6 years, in India, the GDP has been revised upwards. So obviously, the CSO seems to be having a good track record in predictions. So I would not like to get into an argument whether these numbers are fudged or bad or anything.
No, I'm not saying
I would
fudged,
assume that these numbers are right. And I think CSO should be given credit that in the middle of January, they went out and said that the whole year would be 7.1, when most people quoted some World Bank data or what Dr. Manmohan Singh said in Parliament and all that rubbish. But be that as it may, as an Indian citizen, I'm very pleased. I have always believed that the Indian economy is very resilient. I've always believed that the two macro trends that affect growth in India are inflation and interest rates. And once you have interest rates falling and inflation under check, animal spirits in India will take over, which is what is happening. This is not to Nidhi underestimate the impact of demonetization. Many sectors have suffered. Trade suffered. To some extent, consumption suffered. But the point is the Indian economy was resilient enough that it withstood this suffering fairly well. And going forward, I will go with Ujit Patel's estimate that the remonetization is really started from the 1st of February. And we should bounce back, probably not in the fourth quarter, but surely 17, 18, most economists, and I agree with them, look for a better 17, 18 than 16,
Professor
17.
Kumar has
True,
a quick word for you.
Trump is being protectionist.
Yeah.
Trump is being protectionist. China is having its problems. But India has a fantastic economic model. We are a producing, consuming society. Our worst enemy is ourselves.
Professor Arun Kumar has a quick intervention on what you were just saying.
You know, Vijay, I think...
Sure.
You know,
I'll like to listen to it.
It's good to be optimistic. It's good to say that, things will be good and that we are a very resilient economy, etc. But I think we have to, as economists, have a method to show all that. And the method has to be that the post-November 8th is not what it was before. So even if CSO was right earlier, it doesn't mean it's right today, because the methodology has to change. How do you take care of the unorganized sector, which actually is usually calculated as a proportion of the organized sector? And the organized sector
Nidhi, is this getting into a discussion?
So the point
is this getting into a discussion on CSO methodology?
Well,
I can discuss for 10 hours.
No, but the point is you answer this
GDP
point. How
was
the
done by
unorganized
Manmohan
sector is
Singh.
calculated.
Manmohan Singh and Monte Ahluwalia revised the methodology.
No, I'm not talking about that earlier revision. I'm only
defended
saying
it in Parliament. So what are you talking about?
Unorganized sector into account.
Nobody is saying we are fudging data.
No, I'm not saying
Please.
fudging.
He's not saying that.
Let's not draw red herrings
here.
Let's not draw red herrings. Let us debate data. Let us not say that data is fudged and then build arguments on that.
Methodology
He's not saying it's fudged.
Then what's he saying?
Today
the economy...
He is asking whether
Nidhi,
the methodology needs to change.
Manmohan Singh went on Parliament and bashed up the economy, saying the economy was in ruins. Today, actual data has come that the demonetization has not had that much of an effect.
What about
Indian
the
economy is
manufacturing
resilient.
numbers, though?
He's saying the figures are bunkum. What do you do with the guy?
No, I'm only asking
this
how
is
would
it.
you take the unorganized
Ask how many
sector
people are
impact on the
saying
unorganized
figures
sector
are
into account?
bunkum.
What's happening to the unorganized sector? What's happening
Of
to
course,
the
nobody is.
people?
I myself said that the economy has been affected.
So how
I am
much?
saying the Indian economy is resilient enough.
Okay,
I'm not saying people
me
did
now
not suffer.
Let
People
me
did
ask Naina
suffer.
Lal Kidwai this question though on again the RBI data. You know that manufacturing has contracted for the first time in 7 years. Again, this is RBI data that small-scale private companies that have actually seen a serious contraction for 7 years now have registered, a very serious decline this year. The economy is sluggish. Again, the India Spend report, based on this data, talked about the fact that because of a global slowdown, a lack of demand that was already there before before demonetization, you had companies like Nokia, like Larsen and Toubro, IBM, Microsoft, cutting back on their workforces, basically, firing people.
Which RBI data? Which RBI report are you talking
I'm quoting from the
Which
India
RBI
Spend
report
report,
are
sir.
you
One
there are
second, don't
two
get
things.
angry. Don't get
No,
angry. I'm
so there
asking
are two
Naina Lal
things here.
Kidwai.
India's
Yeah,
Spend
if that
report is not an RBI report.
So there-
It is,
You
it
please
is quoting
write
RBI
RBI's
data, sir.
latest,
It is quoting RBI
report on the
data.
economy.
Don't get agitated, sir.
RBI
I'm only
is very
quoting from
bullish
this
about
report.
the
I
economy
sourced
going
I
it.
think there are
forward.
two effects
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Naina Lal
What is
Kidwai,
this?
yes.
You're putting words into RBI's mouth.
So
I'm
there are
not,
two
I'm
effects
telling you where the
RBI is
source
not
is
bearish
from.
about
effects
the
here.
Mr.
economy.
Vijay, 1 second. Naina Lal Kidwai, go ahead.
So there are two effects here. So one is how long does it take us as a country to get back to the November 8th number? And the other question which you're asking is really where were we before November 8th? Before November 8th, we already had issues in terms of investment. That coming off headwinds globally, it was coming off various factors locally. So the first thing is we will get back to the November 8th level, and it looks like we're getting back there faster than most estimated. So we need to put this whole demonetization aside. Yes, it's caused an aberration, but it's temporary at best. In fact, with two additional advantages maybe post-demonetization is one, that if we take a rough estimate of the cash and economy being at, say, 2% of GDP, some part of that money has gone back into the banking system, and that creates the positive credit multiplier. From that also flows a positive tax multiplier. And I've seen estimates which suggest that that brings 80 basis points to maybe even 100 back into the economy. So that's a plus. And that counters some of the negative effect of negative investment, which was already a pre-demonetization issue. So the critical thing here is how do we bring the investment cycle back? I think, yes, confidence has suffered. I think, as Professor Kumar has mentioned, clearly the informal sector has suffered a lot more. Bringing it all back, bringing jobs back is key. So government spending is going to be important, and that is clearly up. Estimates there are important. We have to make sure that that continues at a level which creates this. We have to bring confidence back. Confidence has suffered, and private sector investment is at a low, and important to see that come back. The real estate sector is usually a barometer of new investment. It leads to other investment. And I do believe that we will see that sector kick back in faster than what we were originally thinking.
Kiran Majumdar,
we're already seeing banner projects being able to sell.
You've made very important points, and Kiran Shaw,
Yeah,
how do you think?
All in all, I'm quite positive.
Okay, so Kiran Majumdar Shaw, just a quick last word from you. That how do you think that investment and that confidence is going to come back? You may be optimistic about it, but how do we, create those jobs, which is, I think, the most fundamental question people care about?
I think, we've had a very challenging, set of circumstances in terms of jobs even prior to demonetization. And I think this is something that we really need to work on very, very strongly in many, many sectors. And I, for one, believe that the extra credit capacity that has been created in the banks should be used to basically look at sectors that are going to create these new job opportunities. I think the one thing we should desist from is to, pump this money and create large NPAs, because I think this is the danger that we should avoid. I think we really need to focus on sectors that create genuinely new jobs, and I think there are many such opportunities which we, can have another discussion on. Having said that, I'm also very keen to see how we basically take advantage of the current situation vis-a-vis China and focus on making ourselves more export competitive. And in this, I want to also just briefly touch upon the fact that the rupee has been very strong. And I would like to see that, you know, we don't keep propping up the rupee with a lot of the dollar reserves that we have. You know, we need to make sure that we are cost competitive and export competitive.
Well, I think what's important is that these numbers have defied expectations, and certainly there is a hope that this means that the economy is going to be able to recover from here on. Thank you to you all for joining us tonight, and I think economists will be breaking down those numbers more closely over the next few days and weeks. We'll see you all again tomorrow night. Goodbye.